is that I was writing about the 10 years of floundering through my dating life and not figuring out how to be with a woman.
Before we get into it, picture this. It's the summer of 1989. Movie theaters are packed with capes and bullwhips. Batman is swinging through Gotham. Indiana Jones is racing Nazis for the Holy Grail. And somewhere in the middle of all that spectacle, a small, talky romantic comedy about two New Yorkers who can't decide if they're friends or something more quietly slips into theaters. Nobody was betting on it to become one of the most quoted films of the decade. But When Harry Met Sally did exactly that. And it did it by being sharp, honest, and a little bit strange behind the scenes. Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan carried a story written by Nora Ephron and shaped by director Rob Reiner. And somehow it turned into the movie every rom-com since has been quietly copying. Today we're digging into 15 facts about how this film actually got made, the casting near misses, the real-life secrets hiding inside the script, and the one scene that made an actual princess crack up in public. Stick around, because a few of these will change how you watch the movie forever. Let's get into it. It's hard to imagine anyone but Billy Crystal delivering Harry's rambling monologues about death and pastrami. But he wasn't close to first in line for the part. Rob Reiner and his producers ran through a genuinely wild list of names before landing on Crystal. Tom Hanks was offered the role and turned it down because he felt the material didn't have enough weight to it. Harrison Ford was in the mix. So was Bill Murray. Michael Keaton got a look. Richard Dreyfuss came up. Even Albert Brooks, whose comic voice practically invented the neurotic New Yorker archetype that Harry lives in, passed on it. Reiner reportedly even toyed with the idea of stepping in front of the camera and playing Harry himself, since so much of the character had been pulled from his own post-divorce life. Once you know the shortlist, it's almost funny to imagine Batman's alter ego trying to convince Meg Ryan that men and women can't just be friends. Crystal brought something none of the other names quite had. A mix of charm and exhaustion that made Harry's cynicism feel earned instead of just grating. Casting confusion wasn't limited to Harry's side of the diner booth. Reiner's first choice to play Sally wasn't Meg Ryan at all. It was Susan Dey, best known at the time for her television work. Dey turned the role down, which opened the door for Ryan, an actress who was still building her film career and hadn't yet become the genre's defining leading lady. It's strange to think about now, since Ryan's performance basically became the blueprint for how a rom-com heroine should talk, eat lunch, and argue about whether she just had feelings for her best friend. If Dey had said yes, the entire tone of the movie, and possibly the whole future of the genre, could have looked completely different. Strip away the plot, and what you're really watching is an argument between the director and the writer, acted out by two proxies. After his divorce, Reiner was single, gloomy, and endlessly overthinking the dating world, and he handed Ephron hour after hour of raw material about exactly how he felt. Ephron took Reiner's pessimism and built Harry out of it, while shaping Sally as something closer to a counterbalance, organized, hopeful, and completely certain that she had her romantic life under control. The film plays like two people who had genuinely debated whether men and women could stay platonic, then decided to let fictional stand-ins fight it out on screen instead. Neither character fully wins the argument, and that's really the point. The two people who invented the debate had already picked their sides long before the cameras rolled. Nora Ephron gets credit for one of the sharpest screenplays of the era, but a lot of what makes Harry so memorable came from Crystal riffing in the moment. The most famous instance happened at Katz's Delicatessen, where the scene originally just had Sally explaining that women sometimes fake their reactions during sex. Ryan pushed for something bigger. Instead of explaining it, why not demonstrate it loudly? In the middle of a crowded restaurant, Crystal's reaction shot, and the deadpan line delivered by an older woman at a nearby table, "I'll have what she's having," became one of the most quoted moments in film history. That woman, by the way, was Estelle Reiner, the director's own mother, cast almost as an inside joke. Other bits of Harry's charm were built the same improvisational way, including the ending of his New Year's Eve speech about the small, specific things he loves about Sally, which leaned heavily on material Crystal generated rather than lines straight off the page. The split-screen sequence where Harry and Sally each call their best friends to dissect the night they slept together looks effortless on screen. 4 actors talking over each other in perfect comic rhythm. Getting there was brutal. Reiner refused to shoot each actor separately and stitched the footage together afterward, convinced the timing would feel dead if the actors weren't actually reacting to each other in real time. So the production built connected bedroom sets on one soundstage and wired them with working phone lines, meaning the cast really was talking to each other live during every take. One flubbed line, one mistimed pause, and the whole take was scrapped. According to on-set accounts, the scene needed roughly 60 attempts before everyone nailed it cleanly at the same time. All that effort produced barely 90 seconds of finished footage, and most audiences never clock how technically difficult it was to make it look that easy. During the scene where Harry and Sally wander through the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Crystal launches into a ridiculous Eastern European accent and starts inventing dialogue about paprikash and pecan pie that wasn't written anywhere in the script. Ryan hadn't been warned it was coming. If you watch closely, there's a moment where she glances slightly off camera, essentially checking with Reiner in real time to see if she's allowed to keep playing along. He waved her on, and the laughter that follows, the one where she's clearly fighting to keep a straight face, is completely real. Reiner loved the authenticity of it so much that he kept that exact take in the finished film rather than reshooting for something more polished. Scattered throughout the movie are these short interview-style cutaways of older couples, describing how they met decades earlier. They're performed by actors, but the stories themselves are true. The framing device reportedly started at a dinner hosted by Castle Rock executive Alan Horn, where Reiner asked Horn's father how he'd met his wife. The older man described spotting her across a restaurant, telling a friend on the spot that he was going to marry her, and doing exactly that within a couple of weeks. A courtship that took a fraction of the 12 years Harry and Sally needed. That story became the very first couple shown in the film and inspired Efron to go collect more. She reportedly spent time interviewing crew members and co-workers about their own parents' romances, gathered the strongest stories, and had actors recreate them for the camera. One of the quietest, most intimate moments in the film has no kiss and no big declaration. It's just Harry and Sally lying in separate beds, watching Casablanca on their own televisions, bickering about the movie over the phone like they've done it 100 times before. Efron didn't invent that ritual. It was reportedly lifted from real life, based on Reiner and Crystal's own habit of calling each other up, tuning to the same channel, and watching whatever was playing together from their separate apartments. It's a small detail, but it quietly makes the film's whole argument for it. People who insist their only friends don't rearrange their evenings to watch the same old movie together on the phone. That's what couples do, whether or not they've admitted it to themselves yet. For most of its development, when Harry met Sally wasn't called anything close to that. The production cycled through a long list of alternate titles, including Just Friends, Boy Meets Girl, Words of Love, It Had to Be You, Harry, This Is Sally, How They Met, and Play Melancholy Baby. None of them quite captured what the movie was actually about, since it kept shifting shape between a friendship story, a dating comedy, and a slow-burn romance spread across 12 years. Eventually, the filmmakers landed on the version everyone knows now, though even that came with its own quiet controversy. The trailing ellipsis at the end of the title was reportedly not something Efron ever fully embraced, even after the name itself was locked in. Eagle-eyed viewers have spotted Harry reading a copy of Stephen King's novel Misery at one point in the film, a small detail that becomes a lot funnier once you know that Misery was the movie Reiner directed immediately after finishing When Harry Met Sally. It's the kind of blink-and-you-miss-it detail that wasn't necessary for the story at all, but it stuck around as one of the more fun pieces of trivia for people who rewatched the film closely. Reiner's original plan for the ending was far less romantic than what audiences eventually got. He initially intended for Harry and Sally to walk off in opposite directions with no big reunion and no speech, treating that quiet a goodbye as the more honest choice. Then real life intervened. During production, a crew member introduced Reiner to photographer Michelle Singer, and he reportedly fell for her almost immediately. That experience apparently changed how he felt about the story he was telling, and he and Efron rewrote the ending into the New Year's Eve dash audiences know today, complete with Crystal's improvised feeling speech about loving the specific, ordinary things about Sally. Reiner and Singer were married the same year the film was released, meaning the man who built an entire movie around the idea that romance often doesn't work out talked himself into believing the opposite while making it. When Reiner needed music that captured old New York romance for the film, he wasn't necessarily hunting for a breakout star. A friend passed along a tape of a 21-year-old piano player nobody outside a small circle had heard of yet. Harry Connick Jr., his voice on the soundtrack, full of easy, Sinatra-style phrasing, ended up carrying much of the film's emotional tone from scene to scene. The album built around the soundtrack went on to sell in huge numbers and won Connick his first Grammy, effectively turning a movie tie-in album into the launchpad for a major recording career. The running joke of Sally ordering food with an almost absurd level of customization, dressing on the side, substitutions itemized, everything adjusted exactly to her liking, wasn't invented for comic effect. It was reportedly based on watching Efron order food in real life. Producers who took her out to lunch during development noticed she negotiated her meals with total precision, and Reiner eventually pointed out that the habit was funny enough to put directly into the movie. It shows up most memorably in the diner scene where Sally orders apple pie a la mode with heated ice cream, strawberry instead of vanilla, and specific instructions about the whipped cream, turning a simple dessert order into a small comedic set piece that says everything about how differently Harry and Sally approach the rest of their lives. Partway through the film, Harry briefly dates a much younger woman named Emily, a role most viewers barely remember. The strange part is who played her, Tracy Reiner, the director's own daughter, whom he had raised since she was a young child after marrying Penny Marshall. By the time filming happened, she was in her 20s and working as an actress, and the script called for Crystal, Reiner's longtime close friend, to romance her on camera. Crystal has described the situation as more than a little awkward, which feels like an understatement given that he was essentially flirting on screen with someone he had watched grow up, while her father directed the scene from behind the monitor. At the film's London premiere in 1989, Billy Crystal found himself seated next to Princess Diana as the Katz's Delicatessen scene approached on screen. The cast had reportedly been briefed on royal etiquette beforehand, which only made the tension worse, since nobody knew how the Princess of Wales would react to Sally's very public demonstration. According to accounts from the cast, Diana leaned over partway through, joked that she was taking her shoes off, and Crystal shot back that he was taking off his pants, an exchange that apparently delighted her. When the scene itself hit, much of the theater reportedly turned to watch her reaction instead of the screen, and she laughed loudly and openly rather than sitting through it with polite reserve. She was said to have enjoyed the film enough afterward to request a copy to watch privately with friends, which might be one of the more unexpected royal endorsements any romantic comedy has ever received. And that's 15 facts about a film that somehow got funnier and stranger the more its real production history came out. A script built out of real arguments, real habits, an ending rewritten because the director fell in love mid-shoot, and a scene that once made a princess laugh out loud in front of a packed London theater. More than 35 years later, people are still arguing about whether Harry was right, and honestly, that's probably the most fitting legacy a movie about an unanswerable question could ask for. If you learned something new here, let us know which fact caught you off guard, and we'll see you in the next one.